Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. It is a Tuesday edition of the show, and we are very excited because we have an awesome guest and a great topic to talk about today from his article that was titled Carlton Davis Bows to No Man. Carlton Davis fears no man either. We are going to have Tyler Dunne from the Go Long podcast and Go Long website on the show. We'll get to him in just a moment. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is the face that runs the place, SR Scott Reynolds. And Tyler joining us for the show. Thank you so much for coming on. How you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure. It's been awesome to just see how many Tampa Bay Buccaneer fans there are when you read a story like this.
Yeah,
it's great. It's great. Passionate crew. I love it.
Well, you certainly had a passionate topic. Carlton Davis doesn't get much more passionate than that guy. I mean, there's no pretense about him. There's no sugarcoating, as you found out. He's certainly one of a kind. And, I think that he's established himself as one of the better cornerbacks in the league, one of the higher paid cornerbacks in the league. And I think he's still ascending. I think that there's still some room to grow for him. I think there's some Pro Bowls in his future if he can hang on to the ball and get some more interceptions. But I kind of wanted to dive right in and just, you're not a Bucs beat writer, right? You covered the NFL. You've got a couple of great social media endeavors that Buc fans should check out here on the scroll. Make sure you follow Tyler at Ty Dunne. That's on Twitter. And then also his YouTube channel, Go Long TD. Of course, TD stands for touchdown and Tyler Dunne. That's great initials right there.
Yeah.
And then also where you can find all the great articles, golongtd.com. And that's a Substack endeavor that you have. And that's where you wrote this article on Carlton Davis. So what was the origin of this? What made you want to pick Carlton Davis of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this year in the offseason to cover and just talk about how that process began for you?
No doubt. And thanks again for having me on. And it's awesome to see what you guys have built, with your own bare hands. So have such a respect for that, cut away from corporate USA, just do it your way. I think people love it. They respect it. And that's honestly, I guess, big picture. These are the kind of stories I love to do. I just feel like in a world of social media slop and GIFs and memes and, we're all kind of getting dumber, on purpose by a lot of these companies.
Yes, indeed.
I think that this kind of way of approaching the job allows people to maybe take their brains back. If you want to just sit down, learn about somebody for a half hour. Yeah. I think that goes a long ways. I mean, hey, we're all pouring millions upon millions of dollars into pro football, into the NFL. Yeah. We should all get more than just, podium talk and drivel, and I got kind of disillusioned with seeing the business go that direction. Mm-hmm. So around November 2020, right when the Bucs were going on the Super Bowl run, I launched Go Long, human interest stories, profiles, try to lift up the curtain on how pro football really works. And I first connected with Carlton then, a week before the Super Bowl. Just got his number, gave him a call, fully expected him to hear a voice that he didn't recognize and hit click and screw this guy calling me from Buffalo, New York. Was not the case. He interests me back then because we all saw what happened against Tyreek Hill in round one. Yeah. It was ugly. What was it? 269 yards, 3 touchdowns. Yeah. CBS 4:00 slot. So we all saw it.
Right.
It was bad. I guess I was just kind of intrigued where I like his style. Yeah. He's in your face. And I love the spat with Michael Thomas, right? They went at it. It was kind
Slant
of
boy.
Slant boy. By the way, Michael Thomas has deleted his tweets. Carlton Davis's tweets are still up. So
really, that's interesting.
There's a lot.
That
right
is
there.
interesting. Yeah.
So I just called him up and asked him about round 2. What was his state of mind, and he didn't back down. Then he said, "Look, I'm going to get up in his grill. I'm going to use my hands. I'm going to be violent. That's the way I play." And he kind of mentioned in passing, it's because of where I grew up in Miami Gardens, and he touched on his past. He didn't really want to go that deep. I mean, I'm just a schlub calling him out of nowhere on the phone. Why would you? So fast forward to this offseason, nobody's talking about the Bucs. They've basically been left for dead. I think I wrote in the story, it's like they have no pulse. Yeah. It seems like nationally they're the forgotten team. Yeah. But I'm looking at their roster. I'm like, there's some pretty good players here. Shaq Barrett, Carlton Davis.
We're trying to tell everyone.
Monte Davis. Yeah, they kept some of these players too. So even with the dead money with Brady's contract, they're clearly going for it.
Right.
So I just contacted the Bucs. You know, when I do these stories, there's a lot of different avenues you can take, and just reach out to a guy directly, go through agents, go through the teams. The team was really great to deal with. They quarterbacked the whole deal. I was able to sit down with Carlton Davis, and he knew going in it wasn't going to be a 10-minute, X's and O's talk. It was going to be probably an hour plus, and he was willing to go many different directions.
Well, let's give Buccaneer fans, our Pewter people watching our Pewter Report TV YouTube channel audience, a little taste of Carlton Davis. You've seen him before. I mean, he's no stranger. He's been here since 2018, but this is a little bit of podium Carlton Davis, where it's PG-13, and then we'll get into the good stuff that Tyler Dunne got in his interview after you get a little taste of Carlton here.
I mean, I never really paid attention to any of that stuff. Honestly, I'm like oblivious to it. Even when Tom was here, of course we got a lot of attention, but that was never my focus. Like I was never like feeding off of it or motivated by it or anything like that. So for me, it's just another season to prove ourselves again. Obviously, people are underrating us, but I think that's a good thing because when we punch you in the mouth, it'll be, oh man, okay, it's the same, team, same culture. And I think it's a great opportunity for guys like everybody, not even just myself, everybody to prove ourselves and show how great of a players individually we are and how we can come together as a team and still have that same culture and that winning mentality.
So that's a little taste there, Matt. We see that Carlton Davis sometimes at the podium. And then there's some times where he gets a little feisty when the cars aren't in front of him. It seems to kind of ratchet up a little bit. And Tyler, I think you got a heavy dose of that Carlton Davis. And I think with each day that goes on with this offseason, and you mentioned it, this power rankings comes out, Bucs are ranked 30th. This one comes out, they're ranked 27th. The way too early mock draft comes out, Bucs are picking 1st overall or 5th overall. And it just seems like the tension is boiling in this guy. He can't wait to get to Minnesota in week 1 and get this thing started.
That's probably the best way to put it, that it's boiling. In conversation, like it felt like a steady build of pent-up emotion, passion that bordered on anger, really.
Yeah.
When he's breaking down that matchup with Jamar Chase and saying, look, like, who's doing this? Who's shadowing number 1 receivers? Look at the numbers. Look at the stats. Look at the film. And that's when he really started to get kind of worked up. And I don't blame him when people are basically referring to your team as dead and the season hasn't even started yet. And you take it as seriously as you do when you're Carlton Davis. Yeah, you're going to get pissed off. You're going to let people know that this is what's going to happen. This is how we're going to attack this season. This is how I'm going to attack the wide receiver in front of me. And I think it's unbelievably refreshing. And I guess kind of at the heart of the story and at the heart of Carlton Davis's approach, and why I think he's right, why I do think Tampa Bay can win 9 games this year, can make the playoffs. Football is just, it's not won this time of year. It's not won on a spreadsheet.
Right.
Mathematical equations. It's hard to put your finger on it, but when you're lined up the line of scrimmage and you need a yard or you need to stop a team from gaining a yard and everything's on the line, like you've just got to dig in and there's something intrinsic and intangible that you either have or you don't have.
Yeah.
That's why we took it all the way back with Carlton like we did. I mean, it starts when he's 6-7 years old and going through Navy training with his dad.
Yeah.
Shots are going off at youth games and there's drug dealers betting tens of thousands of dollars on your game and you're seeking shelter. It was nuts.
Yeah.
Of course he's not going to feel pressure around to a Tyreek Hill when he
Yeah, that's why I love, like, even in the beginning, you were talking about Carlton played in the Super Bowl, and he was like, that wasn't pressure. Playing in an NFC Championship game against some of the top receivers, that's not pressure. Everything that you laid out about, gambling tons of money on middle schoolers playing football was absolutely unreal. But I'm glad you brought up the Jamar Chase game. And I loved what you wrote in this story. I think Carlton said it, and you mentioned it as well, that Carlton looks at it like a boxing match, a real one-on-one. And you get it at its best when it's wide receiver against cornerback. And I think why that stood out so much to me is that when you bring up that, like, him and his family got in a lot of fights, early in that school, you kind of see that portray onto the field with the Jamar Chase game and why he played so well. And I always go back to, I've mentioned this before on podcasts and writing about it. The game that put Carlton Davis on the map was like early in his career, I believe the 2019 season. He went up against DeAndre Hopkins when he was still with the Texans and had probably his best game of his career at that time. He has since gone on and done very well. And Carlton just craves for those types of matchups. And it just, you get so much more of an understanding when you read your story between, the fights that he was getting into, how he just kind of likes to antagonize people, why he's going on Twitter, going up against Michael Thomas. It really like pieced everything together. And I love the boxing analogy of it.
I appreciate that, man. It's true. And Carlton kind of pointed out that a lot of corners probably do get psyched out by the aura around some of these receivers when they've got 1.5 million followers, and there's Stephon Diggs at a fashion show in France, and Justin Jefferson with the gritty taking out a life of its own. I mean, all of these guys are celebrities. They really are. Tyreek Hill, and I think whether they admit it or not, a lot of cornerbacks step up to the line of scrimmage and that stuff kind of weighs down on them. Like, all right, I saw the highlights of this guy just torching the cornerback the week before. Maybe I'm not going to necessarily be that aggressive at the line of scrimmage with 5'8", 5'9" Tyreek Hill, because if I miss, I'm going to be posterized. I'm going to be on SportsCenter and Instagram and everybody's feed for all of the wrong reasons, and I don't want to deal with that. So I'm just going to play off, play a little soft. Maybe I got a little help inside. Maybe I have a little help over the top. No, Carlton Davis is going to be in your face. He's going to treat those 5 yards, which is great about football still. The sport's going soft. It drives me insane.
Me too.
It's not what it used to be. Agreed. All of that. I'm the old man throwing the remote against the TV. But it's still football, those 5 yards. You can do what you want. Good luck to you, because if you miss, you will lose. But as Zyon McCollum, I mean, he broke it down. It's like he's punching holes through guys' chests. I mean, he really is punching you because it's legal right then, and he wins more often than he loses, because it also just throws the timing off. I mean, these quarterbacks get the ball out so quick that if you can just throw it off a little bit, as Zion said, then that quarterback has to look to the other side of the field, and you just eliminated half the field. There's no metric for that, right? You're not getting credit in the stat book for that, but I think Carlton Davis has that type of effect on the defense too.
I love this quote from Carlton here. And, I've been in these type of interviews before with different players where the quotes are so great, it really just writes the story for you, right? And it's awesome when you have a subject deliver like this, where I'm not saying you didn't do any work, because you did. You did fantastic work telling this story. But, man, I personally enjoy effing up everybody. I personally enjoy me being the best version. I enjoy taking it to people. I enjoy making them pay. It's not a particular person. I'm personally invested into my career being great. That comes with me effing you up, locking you down, putting my hands on you. And, like, you can write that, right? You can watch film and you can write that. But to hear him say it, and the film backs that up, that's one of the things I really enjoy about Carlton Davis is he will run his mouth, but he does it in a non-antagonistic way. He does it in a way that he is so comfortable in his own skin, and it's not really geared towards anybody else. He's not throwing shade at other receivers. He's doing this to tell himself, this is what is going to happen on Sunday. This is what I'm going to do.
I totally agree. It's not like I sat down with Carlton Davis at Bucs HQ and he instantly just started talking smack and going after anybody doubting this team, saying they'll be just fine without time. Like, no, that stuff kind of came up organically about an hour into the conversation.
Yeah.
So it's just who he is. It was just over, I try not to have interviews with players. I want to have conversations where we're just talking.
Exactly.
And if you're that confident, if that's what you truly believe, then you don't care who hears it. You don't care if Stephen A. Smith is talking about you or Colin Cowherd or players are going on TV and they're all shook. It's so refreshing. I'm telling you, it's so refreshing to sit down with a player who, and a lot of guys are like this, which is good, but they say what they really mean. And it's not just clouded in just fluff. It's not sanitized in Purell because that's what they think should be heard and said. And no, like when you've been through everything Carlton Davis has been through, hell yeah, let's go. Let's win at the line of scrimmage. Let's punch you. And I kind of love the it was unintentional, but there's such an analogy between that 5 yards that he has now, where he's trying to punch you and fight you and be a boxer, and when he would play on the street back in Miami Gardens, right, where he'd go block to block with his brothers, and he's got that little strip of grass between the road and the sidewalk where you were allowed to hit kids there. You couldn't necessarily on the street, even though people did, and then fights broke out. But there's that little zone as well when I grew up.
It very much felt like, with everything you just said and in the story, that Carlton had to grow up like rather quickly. And I think, I'm curious to get your opinion on this. I think because he had to grow up quickly, it gave him a self-confidence almost right away that you kind of see on the field and that you see even in the interview. You know, for example, when you put in the story that Carlton saw you writing something down, then you said, I didn't get bullied. Make sure that's a fact. I didn't get bullied. And I just see that confidence carry with him throughout his whole career and coming to Tampa. Did you get that feeling as well?
That's a great poll, man. Appreciate you bringing that up. It's true. Like, he was kind of breaking down the dynamics of South Florida, particularly his neighborhood in Miami Gardens, and he seeing kids get bullied. And I just was kind of jotting down maybe how he was saying it or something. And he kind of saw me. It's like, hey, oh, I wasn't bullied. No, that wasn't me.
Right.
But I think, look, a lot of players come from some brutal neighborhoods, backgrounds. That's what makes the NFL and football special. Is, I mean, it can lift you out of where you are. I mean, Damar Hamlin, I got to know really well a couple of years ago, and McKees Rocks, where he grew up, he said more than half of his friends were dead or in prison by the time he was, in high school. So it's kind of nuts where these guys come from. But I'll say this, Carlton Davis, he took all of the good out of his situation. He really did, where, yes, he is in the street, and yes, a lot of his friends are putting a gun in their backpack for protection because they don't know what's going to happen to them. And a lot of those friends are then going down a very, very dark road. Yeah. Maybe they're locked up. Maybe they're even dead today. But he found a way to take the good of the street, the competitiveness, and the fact that they'd be playing street football until 1 a.m., 2 a.m. if they're on his grandmother's street because they have street lights. Yeah. And also in school. Like, especially his older brother. His older brother was the one getting into a lot of fights. Yeah. When a lot of quote unquote thugs, like you see on the screen, try to take it to him. And so that kind of.
We just lost Tyler there. We'll have to get him back. I'm going to read these quotes here while Tyler reconnects. And this was a really fascinating part of the story, Matt, because we only get so much time, and what I mean by that is kind of shortened windows. Right. In open locker room, you get 45 minutes, and you're not going to have a 45-minute conversation with the player because they're going to be in, talk to the media for 5 or 6 minutes, and then go ahead and get
a workout in or go.
Exactly, yeah. But when you have a situation like this where Tyler can sit down and really go through the history of this, and this is what I thought was fascinating because, I knew where Carlton came from. I've never had a conversation about his upbringing, and I think this is really important, to who he is. These are a couple quotes from Tyler's article here, and Tyler, I want your take on these, especially the second one here. The first one is Miami football is a religion, so you live and die by the park. If you're weak, you're going to get weeded out quickly because the environment is so hostile. It's a jungle. I had my brothers. We were a team together. People hate when you're not a thug. And that's really the one thing that you just said, Tyler, is it's so easy to get caught up in that lifestyle, right? And where drugs and guns and gangs are prevalent in those types of neighborhoods. And he took a lot of pride in not going down that road. Why did he not? What steered him away from that, and kept him on the straight and narrow to not get derailed and to go to Auburn and use that as a springboard to the NFL?
I think it started at home, where his father, up until middle school, anyways, was present. Which that's a whole other story that he kind of touched on. Didn't really want to go down that road. There's a lot of bad blood, he said there. Yeah. But in his childhood, his dad was in the Navy, And when he's 4 years old and his brothers are playing youth football, there's Carlton running laps around the park at age 5, age 6, age 7, age 8. They go out to the sand pit right by the Miami Dolphins stadium, where it's not there anymore, but just have them doing Navy training, running around this sand pit, having to carry a stick to kind of poke away the stray dogs, he said, push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups. I mean, everything. So you have that element where his dad is kind of giving him structure and purpose, and it's not easy because it's also 100 degrees. But then he also had a mother who was actually a correctional officer, but really wanted to introduce the arts and get him thinking in a completely different way, kind of using the other part of his brain. Yeah. So she was really into poetry and did a lot of poetry slams in South Florida, and Carlton would open up for her. I mean, he would just be in front of a packed room. Poetry slams were huge then. And his mom would write him a poem, and he'd have to recite it in front of everybody, which kind of, I mean, there's something there. I think that helps you as a cornerback when you're one-on-one with Jamar Chase in front of millions where nothing's going to really phase you. It kind of started there. So he kind of had, both sides and kind of get involved with two completely different things with two completely different types of parents. I think that served him really well. Also, I mean, he still was in the neighborhood he was in. So it's not like you can just completely avoid, fights and the sights and sounds, especially when it's at your own youth football game.
Yeah, for sure.
And one of these guys loses a bet, and all of a sudden there's gunfire, and all of a sudden you're trying to find a place to avoid that gunfire at age, 10, 11, 12. I think, though, he was able to thread that needle and take the good out of it. Well, like you said, not go down the path a lot of his friends did. I mean, he's got a lot of friends that are locked up right now.
I wanted to ask you, I'm glad you just brought it up, about like the other side of Carlton with like going to the poetry slams and being in like an elevated school that, he learned French and Spanish. Because I remember like earlier with Carlton, I remember a couple seasons ago, he like posted something on his Instagram about TV show Rick and Morty. And I remember talking to him in the locker room one day being like, hey, like, you're a fan of that show? And he's like, yeah, like, I love it. We started like chatting about that and everything like that. And I've been trying to tell others, like, there's another side of Carlton. And I didn't even know that he was doing, poetry jams or, just learning different things. Like, there's a completely other side to him where, yes, he is all business and physical and will go after a wide receiver. But, his relationship with his daughter, taking her to Disney, there's like a lot more to this guy that I think people don't even realize. And I think that's why he's so beloved, like amongst his teammates as well. Like he's having so much fun with everybody. Obviously, when you win a Super Bowl, you see it when they're all celebrating, but you're like, he gets along with everyone, as you see in that picture right there. And I just think it really tells another side of him.
Yeah, I think it does too, where you can't just be angry and confrontational 24/7, 365. Like it's good, and he is wired that way. He is intense. He is competitive. He is passionate. But I think it served him well. I mean, to just have these other interests. And you're right. He was in a magnet school at such a young age with kids that were older with him. Kind of a weird dynamic too, where that school was like in the building with middle school kids who are in the hood. He said so. You've got kids from all backgrounds, whether you're white, black. He said there was like a lot of Jewish kids from the Jewish community. Like all of a sudden they're getting bullied at lunch from middle school kids. And he's like, I could navigate my path, but I don't know why they were doing that in the Miami schools. Like, what are you thinking here? Right. It was a different world. But I think it also all kind of speaks to the fact where, if you've lived this way and football was always your way out and you live this passionate and you attack the sport like you attack life, that's got to help Tampa Bay right now. And I don't know how you kind of put that into equation and figure it out, but the fact that he wants it to become contagious, that passion, that intensity, it's going to help. I think that's something a lot of teams don't really have. And you're trying to find those leaders and those players who have that perspective and know everything that led to this point. And Tampa Bay has that in a guy in Carlton Davis.
You mentioned the fact that the Buccaneers are actually a pretty talented team. I mean, they have got 9 players that have been to at least one Pro Bowl. On the defensive side, you're talking about Levante David, Devin White, Shaq Barrett, Vita Vea, Antoine Winfield Jr., Carlton has not made it yet. Jamel Dean is also another Pro Bowl caliber player that I think if these guys can hang on to some more interceptions, it's been a bit of a challenge. I don't know that. Did you get into the statistics side of it or the interceptions at all? Was that something that you guys covered?
You guys are probably watching this team play in and play out a lot more than me, game in and game out. But yeah, it does sound like that's a focus. And it's funny, that's actually been a problem for Carlton Davis back to high school because, he was a running back as a kid and dominated, whether he was on the street, on the field, wherever. And then all of a sudden he looked in the mirror and he was really, really tall and lanky and figured out, well, I can't really be a running back anymore. So he played receiver and he could shake DBs loose, but he couldn't catch the ball. And he said his coaches were brutal. I mean, just vicious and told him he was terrible and he sucked and he couldn't catch anything. And finally, eventually, he started playing safety. And it is true. He said in our conversation, he's like, yeah, just pull up my highlights on YouTube. I linked it in the story as well, so you can find it there. But man, some of these hits, I thought it was Sean Taylor out there. I mean, this guy was lighting fools up at safety. And then he had a coach convince him to move to cornerback because he had Xavier Rhodes, who was with the Minnesota Vikings. And everything worked out. But yeah, I think that's kind of been a problem for Carlton Davis in the past. He says he's working on it. Maybe he's at the jugs machine all the time, having people throw him the ball. But turnovers change games. And if he does add that element, when it comes to locking guys down, he believes he's the best cornerback in the NFL. I don't have the metrics in front of me. I'm just thinking back to the games I saw. And talking to people around the league, I got to think he's right up there because nobody's really doing what he does. Right? Todd Bowles wants to blitz. He wants to send the house. That puts so much pressure on these corners when every rule is against you. The NFL is leaning into these gambling apps, which is kind of disgusting, kind of mixing them out to be, drug dealers themselves. I got a lot of thoughts on the gambling. But the fantasy football, they want points. They want these games to be in the 40s. Right. And you're going to be out there one-on-one with Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs.
And all of a sudden you shut him down.
Footwork year-round.
Yeah, you shut him down, then you become, public enemy number one on Twitter from everybody who had Jamar Chase on their fantasy team that week, right? I mean, you're getting
that's what he said.
Yeah, you're getting it not just from Bengals fans, but you're getting it from NFL fans that were ticked off because they lost their fantasy football game because Jamar Chase got shut down by Carlton Davis. And speaking of that, this is what Carlton had to say too, and this really kind of made your story go viral. I saw this kind of graphic with these quotes all over Twitter. We're gonna wreck shit like wreck shit. Interceptions, turnovers, plays will be made. I will say plays will be made. And I got a sense that did this come at the middle or the end of the interview? Because this seems like when you're talking about it escalating and ratcheting up, this seems like kind of like Carlton, he's already gone through warm-ups, the first 20, 30 minutes of the interview. Now it's game time, and here it goes.
That's exactly what it felt like. We're talking Miami Gardens and poetry slams and Navy training from dad and what it's like playing football in the street and drinking water from the hose. It's he just lived outside. And then all of a sudden it kind of steadily builds and builds. Okay, yeah, Jamar Chase. Look at the numbers. Who's shutting guys like that down? Everything he's been through is just perfect for the cornerback position, the mentality, everything that goes into it. And that anger kind of built up to the point where, he is ready to unleash a lot of fury on the NFL. I'm telling you, he means what he says. This isn't a caricature, cartoonish. Like he's not trying to, pretend to be. And I've talked to a lot of players like that. When I was at Bleacher Report before I launched Go Long, and God bless him, Josh Norman was a lot of fun. Right. I did a Q&A with him once. It kind of went viral as well. He's calling out guys by name, Odell Beckham, Dez Bryant. And he's ready to just kind of take on the NFL. But there was always this kind of thought with Josh Norman. It's like, okay, he is really trying to psych himself up. He's into the super scion, all that kind of stuff. Like Carlton is just speaking from the heart. Right. This is what he believes. This is how he feels. So where everybody else might see a team that is going to win 3 games, 4 games, draft Caleb Williams. I mean,
Yeah.
They're not thinking first overall pick. I'll tell you that. They're still thinking playoffs. They're still thinking Super Bowls. And Carlton Davis really wants to be the one who makes that type of thinking contagious to everybody when they start thinking this way and practicing this way and making plays in practice and talking smack. It can become contagious. I think through OTAs and minicamp to an extent. And Zyon McCollum spoke to this as well.
Yeah.
I do think it's catching on.
This is another great quote from Carlton in your story. And you did such a great job of using what he gave you and then just fleshing it out and building and just having this thing flow. So it's a long read, but it comes off like a short read, right? It's like, it's kind of like when you watch an awesome movie and it's 2 hours and 30 minutes and it seems like it's an hour and a half. You're like, wow, it's already over, right? It was that good. This is what Carlton had to say. And I'm going to read the quotes and you kind of give me the context and flesh it out for us here on the Pewter Report podcast. We're about to do it to him. Anybody who feels like we've lost Tom and lost something is going to be in for a rude awakening. A rude awakening. Tom was a great addition for us, but obviously it's a team sport. Obviously, you need components to be successful. We still have those components, and I'm only getting better.
I think that this starts right there in the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs when, years from now when we're talking to our kids and grandkids and people are watching NFL films, they'll think of Tom Brady winning a ring without Bill Belichick. But everybody who saw that game knows it was the defense.
That's right.
It was this relentless, suffocating pass rush. I think Next Gen had it at 497 yards that Patrick Mahomes ran around before he was sacked or threw the ball. I mean, that's absurd. And it was crazy to watch. I mean, I've never seen Patrick Mahomes flustered to that degree. And remember, this is a quarterback who was dominating the second he started games in the NFL.
Right.
So it's not like he developed into this player who could become the best of all time. No, he's been this good all along
great
in the Bucs.
Yeah.
Well, the Bucs just dominated him.
You mentioned that Super Bowl, and it's interesting because that year when they lost right before the bye week, they lost to the Chiefs 24-21. And you mentioned Tyreek Hill just torching Carlton Davis in the first quarter, almost getting 200 yards and a couple of touchdowns. And then all of a sudden, it's like the whole, we're putting Carlton on Tyreek. It's called, cat coverage. You got that cat, you get this cat, and it didn't work out too well, right? But then you could kind of see what was happening. I remember watching from the press box, and all of a sudden they started playing cover two. And that's not a Todd Bowles staple whatsoever. He is a cover one, cover three, as you said, blitz. And when you're blitzing, you don't have enough guys to drop back in coverage, right? So you can't play cover two and blitz. You just don't have enough bodies because you have to rush four and you're going to be dropping seven. But what he did was he went against his own better devices and went with cover two, and it slowed Mahomes down. I think Mahomes only passed for 103 yards in the second half, and Kansas City had a big lead, and all of a sudden Tampa Bay came back. If they would have gotten the ball back one more time, it would have been interesting to see. Bucs might have won that game, but that was kind of like the big storyline here. And and internally, Pewter Report, our reporters, we're talking about this game, and we're like, Todd Bowles figured it out. Like, he's got the blueprint. If they play cover two with this secondary, right, against Patrick Mahomes, if they see the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, if they both get there, it's gonna be a different story. And it took a lot of restraint for Bowles to play a great deal of cover two and only rush four, but it certainly worked that day. And Carlton Davis just had obviously a 180 performance in terms of how he performed against the Chiefs.
Man, I think that's every team's dream, right? If you can just rush four and cover, then you're going to be golden.
Yeah.
However you get pressure, though, whether you get it that way, which is ideal, or you have to blitz, I still feel like you just do it. I mean, because these quarterbacks are so good.
Yeah.
I mean, Joe Burrow saw it this year where a lot of teams were sitting back in cover two, and it didn't matter. He was patient.
He's still going to pick
death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? They ran the ball well. So that's why I kind of like Tampa too. Like, they're going to get pressure one way or another. And I think that game, that moment, just gave the core group on defense so much confidence that it doesn't matter if they play Mahomes, Burrow, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts in the NFC, anybody,
yeah.
That they're going to be able to shut you down because, granted, it was a while ago now, a couple of years, but you still have a lot of those, the Shaq Barrett, Antoine Winfield, Carlton Davis, Levante David. Like, you still have a core group of guys that they did it before. They really do believe that they can do it again. And God, we could do an hour talking about the offense. That's a different conversation, but it does start on defense for the Bucs.
Yeah, it does. And in this first quote here from your story was about that 2020 playoff run, about having to go to New Orleans and beat Drew Brees in a place they lost 7 straight games to the Saints, about half of those in New Orleans, and then go to Aaron Rodgers' home of the frozen tundra at Lambeau Field.
Home.
Yeah, former home. And then play Patrick Mahomes, right? And I mean, in any playoffs, that's a murderer's row, right? I mean, to go from Drew Brees, who still, had the Saints. Saints won the division that year. The Bucs didn't win it. That's why they were playing in New Orleans. Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, and Patrick Mahomes, 3 Hall of Famers in a row, and the Bucs defense essentially got better each game, and that's what Carlton says here. Ran through them, get the F out of here, and then he starts talking about this year, and let's kind of transition to this year. And our effing division is worse than it was before. So we run through this division, get to the playoffs, run through the playoffs, and it's the Super Bowl. He legitimately thinks there is a path for the non-Tom Brady Buccaneers this year to be the surprise team and be counted out, overlooked, and make it all the way. He thinks there is a path to that, does he not?
He certainly does. And this might have been a quote that there might be some people in the NFC South like a little upset when they read this. I'll say Carlton, when he's talking about the division being worse, I mean, he is kind of thinking back to that Super Bowl run, which that's objectively true. I mean, Drew Brees and that Saints team, we
still had Matt Ryan in Atlanta, right? You had Matt Ryan in Atlanta. You had Drew Brees in New Orleans, right? Carolina for a long while. I mean, when he was first playing as a rookie, Cam Newton was the quarterback, right? So,
totally.
He's used to the South being stout, and really for the first time last year it wasn't, but it was even in 2020.
Exactly, and they're still that's the crew that's been there, and it's still at the forefront of their mind. I think that's important too. It's not like this is a team they could have rebuilt. It would have been really easy for the Buccaneers to just look at the money they're eating with Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Sorry, Levante, we're going to put you up in the Ring of Honor one day. Oh, Jamal Dean, look, get your money somewhere. No, like they want to keep as many of the core guys around as they can because of comments like that, because they know what it takes to go through that gauntlet. And I'll just say offensively, we'll see. You guys probably know more than me in terms of like the nitty gritty personnel stuff. Carlton Davis is really excited about that offense. And I think that he sees more efficient, just a rhythm and flow to the play calling that maybe wasn't there before. One play setting up the next. The quarterback isn't going to be a sitting duck. Look, I mean, everybody wants Tom Brady. It's Tom freaking Brady. But the Tom Brady at the end was not really the Tom Brady that they saw in year 1 and year 2 in Tampa.
Yeah, it's interesting because
it's going to be different.
This offense, and you have to give Todd Bowles credit for 2 things, I think. Number one, for understanding, hey, this, kind of hybrid Rams, 49ers, Shanahan, McVay type offense that Shane Waldron took from the Rams to Seattle over the last couple of years, that Dave Canales brought from Seattle to Tampa Bay. This is an offense, and Matt, you've seen it with me.
Oh, yeah.
That has given Todd Bowles defense fits. Look at the 49ers game last year. The Rams games, with the exception of last year when that was a shell of the former Rams. I mean, they're,
injuries left and right all over the place.
Yeah, but he says, wow, this is a really challenging offense for my defense. And if it's challenging for my defense, it's going to be challenging for the league. And look no further. Rams win the Super Bowl. 49ers are always knocking on the door. Hey, let's bring this here to Tampa. And it's a horizontal based attack, a lot of wide and mid zone run schemes, a lot of quarterback bootlegs, waggles, rollouts. So it's getting the defense going side to side, and then they hit you with the vertical play action elements. And, you look at Seattle last year without Russell Wilson, Geno Smith, 4,000-yard passer, journeyman, 32-year-old guy, bounced around the league, first-time Pro Bowler, NFL Comeback Player of the Year. They had 2,000-yard receivers and a 1,000-yard rusher. It's a pretty damn good offense. And if Dave Canales, who I think Todd Bowles gets some credit for taking a risk on a guy that's not called plays before, but if he can become, I think if he become an average to above average play caller in his first year, right? I mean, Kyle Shanahan had to start somewhere. He started calling plays someday. Same thing with Matt LaFleur. Same thing with Zach Taylor. Same thing with Mike McDaniels. You have to start somewhere. And if this guy can start off on the right foot and be the complement to Todd Bowles' defense, you can kind of see why Carlton gets excited about watching this, because he's facing it every day in practice.
I think where everybody else is looking at the Bucs and sees Baker Mayfield, right? Like through all the quarterback madness of March and April, and the Colts get Anthony Richardson and the Jets get Aaron Rodgers, and everybody's playing the game of musical chairs. It's like to everybody else, the Bucs are the team left out. Like they're getting this former first overall pick that didn't pan out with the Browns, didn't pan out with the Panthers, and had a cup of Joe with the Rams. Where I think the Buccaneers are looking at this, and you had Dave Canales on your show. It was fantastic to check that out. They're looking at this more holistically, as looking at the offense as a whole. Like this offense is going to be completely different for all the reasons you just laid out. And granted, you're practicing against yourself. We'll see what happens on Sundays, but I think that everybody there is really excited that the quarterback will be on the move. Look, the running game can't get any worse than it was. It was really bad. And I don't think it was Rachaad White's fault. I mean, I had a story on him last year at Go Long, if people want to check that out too. I mean, like Carlton Davis saw dead bodies, right in his neighborhood. Just crazy what he's been through. The JUCO route, living amongst the cockroaches. It was crazy. And he's a special human being. I mean, I've talked to players around the NFL in terms of good dudes, and you really hesitate when you just say somebody's a good person because you never really know. Yeah. Pretty confident that you can say Rachaad White's
he is.
So wholesome. For sure. But
he's really good too. He's really talented.
Yeah, he is.
And they have a new offensive line.
And I have a great deal of respect for Leonard Fournette, but with Leonard not there this season, Rashaad's the guy. He's the number one guy. We'll see if they add another veteran, but this is Rashaad's running back room, even so young in his career, which is super interesting. But it's funny because when we had Canales on, we were talking about boxing earlier. He likened this Bucs offense to a boxing fight in terms of, there's a lot more shorter routes this year, mesh routes. So he said, we're going to hit you with the body blows, but then we're going to hit you with the haymaker with the big play down the field. And he's like, when you watch a boxing match, they only throw like 4 or 5 haymakers in the whole fight, but you only need the 1 or 2 to really KO
the opponent.
KO the opponent and make the big play to win the game if we're talking football. So I want to bring this back to the defense as well. If there's going to be an improved offense, you're talking earlier about how the defense didn't get enough love for what they did in the Super Bowl in 2020. Even last year, with the struggles the Bucs had, that defense was keeping them in every single game. Like, we want to point to the big comeback against the Rams that Tom Brady had and against the Saints that Tom Brady had. But what we fail to remember is that the Bucs offense struggled the entire game, and it took the last drive of the game to overcome the opponent. And that's because the defense was keeping their opponents to under 20 points. And so when you have this nucleus still there, and they re-signed Levante David and they re-signed Jamel Dean, it baffles me that people are like, they're going to tank for the next big thing at quarterback because they have all the parts right in front of them.
Completely agree. And it's just like the laziness amongst not only fans, but a lot of people in the media, where you just see the situation at quarterback and assume doom. Oh my God, Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask, this team is finished.
I'm not saying it's going to happen.
Carlton Davis is right. Like, it's 53 players.
Yeah.
It's a team.
Tyler, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it happened last year in Seattle with Geno Smith. Nobody had any confidence in Geno Smith except for Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks. That's it. When you made that trade for Russell Wilson, shipping him off to Denver, and everybody wrote the Seattle Seahawks off, either finishing 3rd or 4th, depending on how you viewed the Cardinals last year. This was, the Rams, the 49ers, and then nobody else. And Seattle made the playoffs. They were one of the surprise teams last year.
Right. If you're going to pull up the old power rankings exactly 1 year ago, Seattle is exactly where Tampa is right now. I mean, that's why power rankings are just stupid and a grift. And
it's
I hate it with
off-season
college
content,
because of
I hate it with
it's
college
off-season
football.
content, you know?
Yeah. Oh my God. I know. I shudder to think how many clicks a power ranking gets versus a long form story. I'd probably want to jump out this window, but I totally agree with you. I mean, look, if you work that kind of magic with Geno Smith and you're Dave Canales, like, you know what works. You've got a system that works, and credit to Geno Smith. Like, he did it right. It's not, you probably can't just throw anybody out there, but the system and the infrastructure in place is why we saw kind of a historic jump. I mean, how many quarterbacks that turn into just journeyman, lifetime backups put up those numbers?
Mariota, Jameis Winston, you know, it's just at some point in time, the league just says, you're Andy Dalton now, right? And not the Cincinnati Andy Dalton, the now Carolina Panther Andy Dalton. You know, that's just how it is. But you know what else works? You mentioned what works. What works for us here at Pewter Report is Celsius, the official energy drink of Pewter Report. I would say that's the newest flavor, Oasis Vibe, which is absolutely one of my favorites. Sparkling prickly pear and lime. But it's not the newest flavor. They have a new one, a new vibe called Cosmic Vibe. I just found out about it today. We're going to be getting some, Matt, and we'll ship some to you, Tyler. Do you drink Celsius at all?
Hey, I ain't going to turn that down.
Okay,
Damn
if you haven't tried Celsius, folks, this is the best time to do it. Why? Where do we always point you? We always say go to Amazon, right? Get the subscribe and save money, have it shipped right to your house. Well, folks, I put this in the link before, and Matt will put it in the comments. Amazon Prime Days, right? Today, tomorrow, a whole bunch of stuff on sale. You can get Celsius for up to 30% off. It's absolute time to buy Celsius. Sparkling lemon lime, orange. You've got the vibes, tropical vibe, Arctic vibe, peach vibe. Those are the originals. So many flavors of Celsius, so much energy in each can, and no sugar crash. Why? Because there's no sugar. That's the best part about it. Now, you might be asking yourself, okay, well, what if I want to just try a can before I go buy a whole case on Amazon? Okay, that's fine and that's fair. Go to Celsius.com, click on the store locator, type in your address, and then you'll see all of these different grocery stores and convenience stores and health and fitness stores around you where you can buy a can of Celsius, try a couple flavors. They even have it. What's that thing up north, Matt, where you get Celsius?
I believe it is called a bodega.
Bodega. That's right. Bodegas. Tyler, you probably shop at some bodegas up there in New York, do you not?
I leave all the shopping to my wife Gina, thankfully. So
smart man.
I probably should chip in, you know, throw my hat in the ring from time to time, but that's okay. Yep. She does a great job.
Well, make sure that that you drink Celsius, folks, when you're picking out your energy drink, because it works for us here at the Pewter Report podcast. We call Dave Canales the human Celsius. We're going to ship some to him and Brad Idzik as well, because not that those guys need more energy, but they're going to be in for a long season. So a lot of install, first-time play caller, he's going to need some Celsius. So we're going to be happy to do that. Celsius powers active lives every day with essential energy. Tyler, before we let you go, and we appreciate your time, fantastic article. You've got some great long-form articles, and I agree with you. As someone who, you know, back in my day, we used to write Buccaneer magazine. It was Pewter Report magazine before we had a Twitter page or a website even, and we wrote those long-form stories. You know, that's what was, you know, was prevalent back then. 1,000 words was short. It was 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 words sometimes. My columns, my SRS Fab Fives were usually 5,000 to 10,000 words. I'm glad they're not anymore because I have arthritis. But it's great to dive deep, right? To go below the surface level and to get to the heart of your subject. And what a great job you did with Carlton Davis. We have a super chat here, and because of your neck of the woods, you went to Syracuse. Is that right?
You got it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you are our in-house resident Orange Man expert. And we have a question it's a super chat from LDBC's Most Wanted. Saludos PR. I wanted to ask, what rookie do you expect to have the biggest impact on the season? And why will it be Sean Tucker? Could be a Jason Light gem. So just to catch you up to speed, Tyler, Sean Tucker, you know, he has a heart condition, and the Buccaneers are expecting it to clear up. They're shooting for training camp, or in training camp. They believe that it'll be cleared out of his system by then. And you know, if you talk to some people, Rashad White said that people inside the building are already calling him Baby Nick Chubb, and this guy hasn't even practiced yet. He's just been a bystander. But you look at the film, and he can really be dangerous, kind of in this mid-zone, wide zone with the cutback runs. He runs with power, runs with speed. What have you seen from your fellow Syracuse Orangeman?
He is a stud. He made Syracuse football watchable. I mean, it's different there. Granted, I graduated in 2010, but I think this has kind of been the case since, you know, Donovan McNabb in the late 90s. It's been a rough road for Syracuse football. It's hard to get recruits there. It's hard to get people to care in general. Yeah. I mean, I remember going to games as a freshman because you were a freshman. Yeah. If you went there as a sophomore, a junior, or a senior, it was kind of sad because you didn't have anything else to do on a Friday night. But every time he was on the field, I swear, and I'm watching from afar at that point, he was just bowling over people or running away from humans. And I didn't know about the heart condition until, you know, reading about it before the draft. It's unfortunate. I'm not going to pretend to be a doctor. Right. Let's hope that is all in the clear, because if he's healthy, I mean, I'm totally with that take. He is a steal.
One other player that was kind of deemed to be a steal last year in the draft and had a rough rookie outing, but the Buccaneers traded up into day 3 to get Zyon McCollum. And he's not going to start because you have 2 high-paid starters and 2 really good ones in Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean. But when you look at Zyon McCollum, you had a chance to talk to him about Carlton Davis, but just if you can, give us a couple moments on Zyon McCollum, what the outlook is from his perspective as he enters year 2 after kind of taking some lumps and getting that welcome to the NFL moment over and over again a couple times. But you talk to people in the building, they say he's one of the more improved players this offseason. You typically see the biggest jump from players in their career from year 1 to year 2. What was your takeaway talking with Zyon McCollum?
Right. I think the Carlton Davis effect is reflected in a guy like Zyon McCollum, where it's one thing for Carlton to say, the way I want to punch you at the line of scrimmage and play with this intensity and treat every practice like it's the Super Bowl. It's one thing to kind of say it, but then to live it and then hear a teammate say, yeah, it's different. Zyon said, like, his position coach is telling him, look, Carlton's crazy. Like, he's nuts. Yeah. And he didn't really realize it until he was around him in practice. So I think that's how it becomes contagious. I mean, you listen to Zyon McCollum, it's like you're hanging out with Carlton Davis. Yeah. I mean, he said they want to be the silent assassins. They want to come up from behind and take you by the throat. Very similar imagery with Zyon. And I think we'd all prefer to talk about this Zyon as opposed to the other Zyon and whatever he's up to this offseason. So it was a pleasant conversation. In terms of him as a football player, you guys are probably breaking down more film than me. I just feel like he is a sleeper. I mean, coming up from where he could have gone to bigger schools, but he wanted to play with his twin brother. Sam Houston State, wins a championship. It's hard to be a 6'2", 6'3" corner and run and hit you at the line of scrimmage and stick with you. If he can turn that corner, I mean, that's such a premium position in this defense. They'll be leaning on him at some point.
Yeah. I think Tyler got hurt like early in training camp, and
Zyon.
Zyon got hurt early in training camp. And I think that kind of really hurt his development a little bit, because then when he comes back and he's still trying to like figure out the playbook, and then he had to start in some games or get a lot of playing time because of other injuries. I think it was a little overwhelming for him at first. But, you know, going into this year fully healthy and fully knowing everything in the playbook, I think will be great for him. I love the line that Zyon had when you in your story where he was like, I tried to emulate the skill set of Carlton, and receivers just ran by me every single time. We're saying Carlton has like a one of a kind type of technique, really.
Yeah, like he kind of like jumps up and has a wide stance and punches you and hangs. It was funny that Carlton Davis is talking about his technique and how he hones his technique, and that's how he's able to stick with Tyreek Hill. And then Zion's like, I wouldn't even call it technique. It's really not technique. It's just him at the line of scrimmage punching you in the chest. And if you try to duplicate that, good luck, because you'll probably be on the highlight reel for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Tyler, we really have appreciated having you on. This has been a blast. Just as much fun talking about your article as it was reading it. So kudos to you. It was very well received by the Bucs community. And just want to say, thanks for coming on. We'd love to talk some more football with you when the pads are on and the pigskin's flying. We'd love to get your perspective on the Bucs, the NFC South, and the NFL later this year.
Hey, no, thank you guys for having me. Any day, anytime. I love what you guys have built. It's an awesome show. Great community. That's what it's about. You have a huge community. And I'll have another Buccaneers story in August, early on in training camp. So I was down there for a while. And basically, it's going to explain why Carlton Davis is right. Why he has a point. This thing can work. So I have chatted with a few other folks. And I don't know if you have any Patrick Laird fans on here. Unbelievably fascinating. Third, fourth string running back. I have a Q&A up with him as well. We got into whether free will exists. So yeah, trying to do a lot of Buccaneers stuff. It's a fun community.
It's an interesting team too. A lot of different personalities, and it's not all Tom Brady. Certainly not anymore. But Tyler Dunne, we really appreciate it. Make sure that you follow Tyler on Twitter at Ty Dunne. That's with an E. And then subscribe to Tyler Dunne's YouTube channel at GoLongTD. And visit golongtd.com to read the Carlton Davis story, plus so many other great long-form articles. And we really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Tyler.
Hey, thank you, guys. Anytime.
Yeah, that's great stuff right there. Matt, when you look at, Carlton Davis, gosh, if this guy can just hang on some of those interceptions, right? There he is right there with Zyon McCollum. And I think he and Jamel Dean, both of those guys, can really help shepherd Zyon McCollum into becoming a good cornerback for down the road. He's not going to start. I mean, those two starting spots are locked up with guys making over $12 million in Carlton and Jamel Dean. But I think Zyon is going to be one of those guys that can develop into a starter at some point. It's a big step from Sam Houston to the NFL.
Yeah, it really is. And he's just got to clean up a lot of stuff. Tackling was obviously big for him last year, but no one better to have your back than Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean as well. So definitely an exciting outlook for Zyon going into his second season.
Yeah. Well, folks, if you've followed along the Pewter Report TV YouTube channel, we've had a lot of Buccaneers over this offseason. Finally have a defensive player. Thank you, J.C. Allen, for getting Bucs outside linebacker rookie Jose Ramirez. He'll be on the show tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Make sure that you, if you have not subscribed yet, it's really simple and quick and easy. Just hit the subscribe button and subscribe and help us get to 11,000. We're already at 10,900 subscribers. We're on our way to 11,000. And Matt, there's plenty of other Bucs coverage too.
Yes, there is. So please follow us on our social media at Pewter Report on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. We are on Threads as well, so please follow us over there. And our YouTube channel, we are always churning out content, whether it's podcast clips, various interviews from press conferences, some highlights from practice and training camp when there is availability. A lot of different stuff, a lot more to come, especially as we get closer to the season. So please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are very, very close to 11,000. We would love to get to it soon. So
saw a Saints fan in the chat, which we welcome fans from all teams here on the Pewter Report podcast. But we'll just leave this graphic right here, Matt, as you take us out for the day.
All right, that's going to do it for us on today's show. For Scott Reynolds, for Tyler Dunne, our great guest today, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching, and we will see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.
See murder.